Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I got another top 5 teed up for you. And you know, we got to talk football. We got to talk Brett Favre, too. And yeah, we're going to also get to the implications of restricting women's health in states and how mothers are dying as a result. But before we get all serious, is your team 3-0? Mine is. So we got the Chiefs, Steelers, Seahawks, Vikings, and the Bills riding high into week 4. And some excellent games played this past week. I, for one, was at a bar in Dallas. I was watching the Chiefs-Falcons game, and it was crazy. I didn't realize how many Falcons fans there are in Dallas, or if that many people just really hate the Chiefs. I mean, come on. I mean, I'm glad we're on for one, because losing to the Falcons, even a Kirk Cousins-led Falcons team, it's still bad because it's losing to the Falcons. I'm sorry. Atlanta, I just don't think this is your year. You guys have some amazing tools on your roster, but I just don't think so. And apparently, it's not the Cowboys' year either. The Cowboys-Ravens game was the game that was living in my mind rent-free all week. And I also caught that game in Dallas. And man, I'm happy for the Ravens, okay? I'm going to be honest, all right? Because being 0-3 and having Lamar Jackson is just nasty work. And Dallas, I mean, has some serious problems in its defense. Again, a lot of fans went into this season just praying and hoping that everything would work out, hoping that nothing would come to this. And I'm sorry to anyone who actually believed Jerry Jones for the umpteenth time. I told you, he's like that gaslighting ex every year. Things are going to be better. It's not better. It's not getting better. We're still early, okay? But things feel a lot worse after back-to-back losses at home and a snapped 16-game regular season winning streak. The defense can't stop the run. And you'd think after the Saints turned the line into Swiss cheese 2 weeks ago that they'd look better against, hello, a run-first team, the Ravens. The Ravens ran the ball 45 times, including 25 carries for 151 yards. Cowboys corner Jordan Lewis, I mean, he says the team's got to be accountable, got to be more detailed. You can see all the frustration come from the players, Michael Parsons, all these people. CeeDee Lamb looked like he was getting into it with Dak on the field. I don't know. But anyway, let me just say this. If you can't win against the Giants tonight, Jerry is going to have a fit. That game should be a gimme, and it better be, because I have them boys losing against the Steelers and possibly the Lions. I feel like I've been spending a lot of time, though, on the NFC East this season. And, you know, I try to be fair because, you know, my team's over there in the AFC West. But we got to stay on the NFC East because, wow, those Commanders sitting at the top of the division, too. And who would have thought? Yeah, only 3 games into the season, but you got to get excited because, first of all, they're the only team in the NFC East with a rookie QB at its helm, and they're pulling off some exciting wins. I'm actually wanting to watch Commanders games. Who ever heard of that? You want to watch a Commanders game? Like what? I mean, that's all because of Jaden Daniels, though. He's an exciting player, and he went toe-to-toe against Joe Shiesty and them Bengals, completing 21 of 23 passes for 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and breaking the NFL rookie record for highest completion percentage by a rookie at 91.3%. He took over the record Dak Prescott set back in 2016 when he completed 88.9% of his passes. Daniels also broke the record for highest completion percentage in a game in Washington franchise history. That's huge. Okay, so there's some big things happening in Washington. And, you know, we're going to see how they hold up against the Cardinals on the road this week. I mean, Vegas has them as, 3.5-point underdogs as of right now. But, you know, maybe there's something in that Arizona air. Jaden Daniels actually played for ASU. So, I don't know. Maybe he'll have somewhat of a home team alumni advantage. I don't know. Anyway, the most shocking win of week 3 for me was the Panthers beating the Raiders. And like I said, I was in Dallas at kind of this day party watching the Cowboys-Ravens game, looking all cute. And, you know, I just decided, let me check the score. I'm like, the Raiders have this one in the bag, and I had to show everybody. I'm like, do you see this? Do you see this? But I guess vet QB Andy Dalton had different ideas about all of that. Throwing for 319 yards, 3 touchdowns on 26 of 37 passing. He is the only QB to do that this season. So as you know, Dalton got called up to the #1 slot after back-to-back terrible games and suboptimal performances from last year's #1 pick, Bryce Young. Yeah, Dalton has breathed new life into North Carolina, so maybe he can be the backup QB that Sam Darnold has become for the Vikings. Earlier in the season of the podcast, I was talking to you about the Vikings football. I mean, started off really rough. You've got J.J. McCarthy, who they just snagged from Michigan. He got hurt, and so he's out for a while. He's injured, right? So the question on my mind and everyone else's mind was, can Sam Darnold do it? And the answer is yes, so far anyway. And that's really awesome for him because he's had a lot of shakeups in his career. He was drafted by the Jets, number 3 overall. But, his time there was pretty inconsistent, like I said before. It wasn't always his fault. Jets didn't give him a lot of offensive weapons, but still. He had multiple offensive coordinators, all of that. There's a lot of things that were changing. But as I've said before, the moment many Jets fans will never forget is the first pass he ever threw in the NFL, and it was intercepted, returned for a touchdown. It was really rough, really, really rough. And then he gets traded to Carolina. And then, he ended up looking better as a backup to Brock Purdy's Niners squad. He beat out Trey Lance for that spot. So he's been pushing his way back up to the top ever since. And now he's got a team of his own in the Vikings, 3-0, leading the way. And so the question is now, can they go 4-0 with a win against the Packers this week? And I'm seeing a lot of people choose the Packers over the Vikings, of course, because this week is when QB Jordan Love is scheduled to return to the field after injury. Personally, I think it can go either way. But I want the Vikings to win. And it will definitely be interesting to see how Vikings Pro Bowl running back Aaron Jones will fare against his old team. I don't know if you guys saw this story, but he wrote a note to his old team, a letter, and saying it's his first time that he's going to be on the visiting side of Lambeau Fields. And, we'll see. We'll see. That's all nice and everything, but, I need the Vikings to turn up on them, okay, for sure. I'm betting on the Vikings this week. Since we're talking about the Packers and Vikings, you'll remember one of their most famous players, Brett Favre. Yeah, this week he revealed he's been diagnosed with Parkinson's in a congressional hearing regarding welfare reform. Very sad. But as you know, Brett Favre is facing civil charges for his alleged role in the misspending of welfare funds in Mississippi, taking money from the neediest of citizens and instead using the funds for a volleyball stadium and pharmaceutical startup. Now, Brett Favre has returned $1 million he received for a speaking engagement that state auditors say he did not attend, but Mississippi is still attempting to collect north of $700,000 of interest on that money. And like I said, so sorry to hear about his Parkinson's diagnosis. That is no joke. Very sad. But it should not distract from the severity of what he's being accused of having a hand in. The victims are the poor people of Mississippi who were deprived of more than $90 million in funding that would help keep young, impoverished children fed and healthy. Stealing from the poor, given to the rich. Horrible. And while 7 people have pled guilty to criminal charges and 30 or more, including Brett Favre, are currently being sued in a civil lawsuit, no one served any jail time in the 4 years since the stealing was discovered. And it's kind of interesting that the people that are actually most at risk of serving jail time include the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Anna Wolf, who actually implicated Brett Favre in the scandal. So ex-Governor Phil Bryant sued Anna Wolf and the publication she works for, Mississippi Today, for defamation, all right? And so now a lower court has demanded that Wolf release all privileged documents related to the story, including sources, which she and the Mississippi Today are refusing to do, arguing that it's a violation of freedom of the press. And it really is a huge deal because as a journalist, if you agree to protect your source, you stand on that. And courts have upheld that. And the only time you'll really see a court compel a journalist to reveal their source is if it's related to a national security threat, public safety, something like that. That's not really the case here. But here's the problem, okay? So this is where things really kicked into high gear. This is how the defamation suit began. It was actually the CEO of the nonprofit publication Mississippi Today, her name is Margaret White, who appeared on a national panel and said, quote, "We're the newsroom that broke the story about $77 million in welfare funds intended for the poorest people in the poorest state in the nation being embezzled by a former governor and his bureaucratic cronies, etc., etc." That was the catalyst that began the defamation suit. And here's where the problem lies, right? Okay, so it was Anna Wolf who conducted the investigation about the welfare scandal, okay? She's the writer who brought all of this to our attention, but she never reported that the governor embezzled those funds. He's also never been criminally charged, and he's also denied knowing about any misused funds. And that's the straw, like I said, that broke the camel's back. And so now you see reports that a journalist could go to jail if they don't reveal their sources. And that's because Phil Bryant's legal team now want to scour all of the records, see if the reporting contained any bias, any of that could really help bolster the defamation, the libel claims. And here's the thing, it's a small mistake, but a costly one the CEO of Mississippi Today made. Not only did it open the floodgates on an attack of freedom of the press, it's costing that nonprofit publication a fortune in legal fees. And as we all know, local journalism is a dying breed, and this in no way should reflect on the facts reported by Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Anna Wolf. I mean, she got it right. And honestly, the bigger fish are the ones who stole money from the state, but here's what misspeaking can do. I mean, so you always got to make sure that you mean what you say and say what you mean. And it's sad because journalist Anna Wolf did just that, okay? So it's a really kind of hairy situation right now. And it's unfortunate because we've got this Parkinson story, we've got this defamation suit happening, and I think it takes away from the excellent journalism that we need. And I would hate to see any of that overshadow the great work that Anna Wolf did. I mean, she really put a lot on the line for that. When it comes to sources, I know a lot of people in the public really care about transparency, but you also have to remember when you're taking down huge public officials that have millions of dollars, I mean, there are people who are willing to come forward, but they don't want it to necessarily cost them their livelihood. So they seek the protection from the journalist, the publication. Like, you got to protect me here. I've got to be a confidential source on this. And so when a journalist says that they will keep you as a confidential source, they're not supposed to give you up, because honestly, they could get sued if they do. And that's a really huge thing too. I mean, so you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. It just sucks that some excellent journalism got caught in all of this. And so when you're looking at that story, just wanted to kind of provide you guys with those extra details there. But one more thing here, as we kind of close out my top 5, on a more serious note, I wanted to talk about this because the amount of pregnant women who are dying has increased 56% from 2019 to 2022 in Texas, and that's compared with an 11% increase nationwide. So Texas definitely seeing some problems there, and these stats are based on research from the CDC and nonprofit research group, the Gender Equity Policy Institute. And of course, you can't ignore that Texas's major decision to ban abortion as early as 5-6 weeks went into effect September 2021, and you can imagine how that could play a part in maternal care, and it has for some women. And that was most recently noted in Georgia. The majority of these cases in Texas, I mean, women died due to infection, followed by cardiovascular conditions, hemorrhage, embolisms, mental health conditions also. And 80% of these deaths were deemed preventable by the Texas Maternal Mortality and Morbidity Review Committee. All right. And also part of these stats here, Black women being 2.5 times more likely to die from pregnancy and childbirth, Hispanic women also seeing a sharp increase in maternal mortality. So there are a lot of factors that play a part in this. Racism has long been one. Poverty, obviously, too. Access to excellent health care is always an issue. And it's a very serious issue, especially when we talk about the racism element. It's a statistical fact, for example. I know you guys probably saw this story the past couple of weeks. Black women, for example, are 25% more likely to have C-sections. And C-sections can increase the risk of infection, bleeding, clotting, which, as I just mentioned, were the major contributing factors of death. And there are many reasons this could be happening. A recent report points at implicit racial bias. Like, that's a common occurrence one. I know people don't like to talk about racism anymore, but it's very real. And the kind of quality health care that Black women get. Serena Williams, for example, was very vocal about it. Obviously, she doesn't lack access to excellent health care. But something about this idea of Black women and this trope and stereotype of Black women are stronger, they can take it, and that bias impacting how doctors and healthcare workers treat Black mothers, Black patients. So the recent report pointed at racial bias and also financial incentive to fill operating rooms. And so I just kind of wanted to give you that kind of background information in some of the articles that we've seen recently. But I want to pivot back to abortions in Texas because, as you know, it's banned altogether unless the life of the mother is jeopardized, which is still leaving many parents distraught as they're forced to navigate the issue of severe birth defects, genetic disorders, and there have also been complaints that have been filed by 2 Texas women against hospitals who deny them abortions for ectopic pregnancies. All right, and that's a potentially life-threatening complication, but not serious enough, I guess, by law. These 2 women both lost a fallopian tube, which compromises their future fertility. This was all covered in depth by the publication The Hill, and it's very serious because we've allowed people with insidious political agendas to now dictate the health of women. And if I'm keeping it real, I bet a lot of these people don't even know what a fallopian tube is. Okay, as a woman, it's heartbreaking that the amount of ignorance and nonchalant attitudes surrounding women's health is costing us our lives, our future fertility. And it's funny because everybody pretends they care so much about that. But I knew we were doomed when people were saying that the sole purpose of birth control is prescribed to prevent girls from getting pregnant. And that is not the only thing birth control is prescribed for. Endometriosis is a medical condition that can be excruciatingly painful that birth control can treat. Birth control can also prevent ovarian cysts. It can help women with PCOS. and even reduce the risk of certain cancers, reduce acne. There are a lot of different benefits, and the public is so ignorant as a whole that they don't consider these things. It's really disheartening, all right, because there are people who are truly suffering. And of course, yes, birth control, yeah, there could be side effects, but that's true for every medication, all right? But women's health goes beyond this idea of abortions and, oh, that's women killing babies, or women are promiscuous, that's why they need birth control. Those are tropes that are used to manipulate society, and it's really, really sad to me that there are so many people who have no sympathy for women as if they weren't born from one. 2 women just died in Georgia because of delayed care. 28-year-old mother Amber Thurman, she's a mother, all right? She went to the hospital, she became septic because doctors didn't act right away because of the reversal of Roe v. Wade. All of this confusion navigating the situation led to delayed care as she had leftover tissue that caused a serious infection after she received a medical abortion in North Carolina. Doctors didn't know what to do, navigating all of this legislation. So what happened? A young mother died a preventable death, according to Georgia's Maternal Mortality Review Committee. She had a 6-year-old. Now he's motherless. Candy Miller, a 41-year-old mother of 3, became pregnant in 2022. She got pregnant, but because of her autoimmune condition, lupus, hypertension she also had, her pregnancy was life-threatening, but not life-threatening enough to Georgia, so she had to go online to get medical abortion pills, but because of a rare complication, she died at her home. She felt she had no other option. And that's what we're reducing our mothers to, our women to, what we're reducing our daughters to. Her death was also deemed preventable by the Georgia Maternal Mortality Review Committee. And I hate to end things on a sad note, guys, but I just really wanted to cover that because it's something that really hits home for me. And it's really sad to see so many women having to navigate life or death, or the quality of life for their children, and being almost criminalized for the decisions that they're making for the welfare of themselves and their families. And it's just a really sick, sad situation that we found ourselves in, and we've just really rewinded time here. Yeah, but that's where we are. All right, no interview today. If you're on YouTube watching, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and join me in the comments for a full discussion. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast, make sure to review the podcast. I always love to hear from you guys. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your week.